It's time for TV Skywriter. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to TV Skywriter. I'm Pat Murray, your host. I'd like to introduce you to people who are really cool, who are really interesting, and who've had really fabulous and interesting lives. My guest today is Shamielle Alston. She wrote this book here. She's a pastor, and author of this book is called All a Part of Life. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, and
Pastor
thank you for
Alston.
having me.
And you were holding a little one a second ago. Where'd she go?
Yes, here she is right here, Miss Peyton. This is my grandbaby. She's 3 months old. Isn't she adorable?
Cuteness overload.
She's
She's loved, I can tell.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
Every day I do a show called Bull City Notes. And you asked if I ever talk about foster care.
Right.
And so we met at
Yes.
Panera and gave me this fabulous book. You said it was a quick read.
Mm-hmm.
In a way it is, but in a way you stop in your tracks and you have to read things all over again.
I'm learning that. Just about everyone I've given the book to and those who have ordered it, they're saying the same thing. I'm thinking people are going to read it through, but it's doing that. It's making them stop and think. So that's a good thing to me. That's a good thing.
Exactly. It's a very thoughtfully written book. Why don't you tell us about the book and tell us why you wrote it?
Okay. Well, like you said, All a Part of Life deals with me growing up in foster care. It was such a horrible experience that I felt like I needed to share my story for several reasons. One, my birth sister who was in foster care with me is no longer here. And I just felt like part of her story needed to be told because I felt like she is someone who lived life as being invisible. So I wrote it for her, for the others that have passed that were in foster care. But more importantly, I wrote it because what I want people to get out of it is not just to look at my story, but to consider their story, because we often get stuck in our experiences and rather than move beyond them and get to our greater. And so I wrote my story to say, if I can go through this and emerge standing, you can too. So it's meant to be a reflective piece for people to reflect on their own lives and see what lessons they may have overlooked. So that's why each chapter ends with what lesson I learned as well as, things to do, application aspects.
Okay. Now, your earliest memories, at least that you described in the book, you were only 4 years old.
Right. Yeah.
But somehow you knew you weren't going to see your mother again. They didn't exactly tell you that in so many words.
Right.
What happened?
Well, see, we had a babysitter, Miz Logan, and it's amazing what children can learn just by experience. And experience taught me that whenever Miss Hogan came to pick us up from daycare, I had no clue when I would see my mother again. That was my experience. And, as clear as you can hear my grandbabies right now, as soon as my mom said goodbye to us, it's like some words hit me in my belly like a ton of bricks. And the words said, "You're never going to see your mother again." And it's like that whole day, 4 years old, I'm sitting there and I'm watching the clock. Not that I could tell time, but as a child, you sort of know when it's time for mom to come or whatnot. And it's like when it was time to go, I just kept watching the door to see who was going to come through the door. And it was Miss Hogan. And it's like my heart dropped because the words that I heard that I couldn't tell anyone about, it's like they rang true at that moment. It's like I didn't know when I would see my mother again. And it ended up being 10 years before I saw my mom again. And that was only after my sister and I ran away from foster care.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So you ended up with this lady, Miss Hogan, for a little while.
Yes. We were with her for a while. I really can't tell you exactly how long we were with her. Long enough for her to do some damage, but not extremely long. One particular day, again, I write about this. It was like a Saturday. She dresses us up and she's like, "We're going to go see some of her friends." And so we get dressed, we get in the car and we drive.
But you were surprised that she put you in your Sunday clothes on a Saturday.
Right, exactly. So, you're excited because you're wearing dress clothes. That means you're going somewhere. So the friends that she took us to, they ended up being our foster parents. And so she took us to visit these people who were her friends, and she left us there. And she left me and my sister there, but she took two kids from their house. So it's like they swapped children. She took a sister and brother from the home, and she left me and my sister at the home. So literally, it's like they swapped children. So many things were going on in foster care back in the 70s, and it's amazing. I mean, foster care has come a long way, and anyone in the system will tell you it still has a long ways to go. But the stuff that was going on back then, it's just unbelievable. It seemed like they was just getting away with murder, basically.
Well, so I'm guessing maybe the lady gave up two of her birth kids so that the
No,
lady could make money off of
no.
those kids.
Though I'm passing off the grandbaby, so excuse me. No, I think you hit it on the head. It was about money. To me, I think it was about money. But again, Miss Hogan had myself and my sister. That's two females. Now, what she took from the foster home was a sister and a brother. So she gained a daughter and a son. She gave up two girls. I felt like she wanted to have a boy around the house because they can do more chores. That he can do more than girls can do.
Okay.
That's how, growing up and looking back on it, that's what it felt like. Just a little bit about them. They're grown. We're all the same age and whatnot, and they also ended up running away from there. Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
right?
they did. They ended up running away from there. Yeah,
Now
and they
you had a sister, and at least you were kept
yes,
together. I mean, you didn't
yes,
have any other siblings, right? Just your
right,
sister.
right. Just myself and my sister, right.
hmm
And
And her name
I
is
am.
Shaquita.
Yes, her name was Shaquita. We were 11
hmm
months and 12 days apart. And
Wow.
she was the oldest, and she still is today my heartstring. That girl was my heart. She was a beautiful person inside and out.
hmm
And I am grateful that we were raised together. I cannot imagine what life would have been like without her as a sister.
hmm
She was the clean one. She was the one that made sure we looked good, and then I was the fighter. I was the one. You say good. I didn't need a reason. I'm ready to fight. So yeah, I
hmm
was the fighter, and she was the motherly type.
Do you
Yeah.
think you would have survived the abuse that you had to put up with without her? Do you think?
I'll say yes, just because that don't kill you makes you stronger, and unless they just killed me, I don't even know how to say it, but what I want to say is, in life you have to make it through. If it doesn't kill you, you have no choice but to make it through it. So
hmm
yes, I would have made it through it. Definitely having a sibling made it easier, but in some cases it made it easier, but not always, because when you're watching your sister be beaten
hmm
and touched and a whole bunch of other stuff. I didn't write about the sexual stuff in the book out of respect. But when you're watching things go into your sibling, it makes it harder for you.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to endure stuff for yourself, but when you're watching your sibling go through it and there's absolutely nothing you can do, and she felt the same way about me,
hmm
to watch me have to go through and
Man.
whatnot, and there's nothing you can do about it, because I mean, you're a child. You can't uh, you defend yourself.
hmm
And what is amazing is, I think maybe like a year or two after my sister and I ran away from the foster home, our foster father ended up dying of cancer.
Mm.
And the
But let me tell you how I
go
felt
ahead,
reading about that.
go ahead, talk to me.
You're a sophomore in high school. You're like what, 14?
Right, probably
And
about 14.
after everything he put you through, which we don't
Right,
have to mention, but they
right.
can read about it in the book.
hmm
Here you are 14, but you forgave him as he's
hmm
dying of cancer. And I'm thinking, what 14-year-old has that kind of grace and maturity?
You know, I'll tell you this. I have always felt like I was older than I am. I finally feel like now I'm catching up to my age. But when I was a child, I never felt like a child. I always felt older. I felt like I knew too much. And the one thing that they did right was take us to church.
Hmm.
And I listened. When the pastor talked about forgiveness, I listened. When the pastor talked about love, I listened. When the pastor talked about God, is there when no one else is there, I listen. And that's what got me through. And, seeing him in that hospital bed, he was a shell of a man. I mean, he was no longer a threat to me. I could
Mhm.
have been ugly. But at the end of the day, what would it have benefited me? There are
Mhm.
dreams and goals that I have. And I'm just the type of person that I really believe that you can get in your own way. And I just don't want anything hindering what I want to do in my life. And I refuse to let him be another stumbling block.
Mhm.
He's already done so much damage. It's like, take it
So,
off,
so
let it go.
if you had been really ugly, the hatred probably would have eaten away at you as well.
It probably would have. Yes.
Now, I had a next door neighbor when I
Hmm.
was in Chicago.
Hmm.
She had been brutally abused by her husband all throughout their marriage, and they
Hmm.
finally divorced.
Hmm.
And I guess he had a different family or whatever. I don't know what happened, and I wasn't
Hmm.
in the neighborhood yet. But anyway, what happened was he had cancer later in
Hmm.
life,
Uh-huh.
and nobody wanted this guy. He was a
Right.
hateful guy. Nobody
Mm.
wanted him. Somebody set him out in front of her house on the sidewalk.
Wow. Oh my
she
God.
she took him in
Hmm.
and she
Hmm.
took care of him until he died. And I said, "How could you
Uh-huh.
do that? Because he had abused you." And
Hmm.
she said it was just between her and God, and she felt
Right.
she had to do the right thing.
Right. I
I
get
had to
that.
admire that.
Yeah, it's amazing how God will strengthen you to do things like that. And it's the grace component. It's the grace component. It's the mercy component. It's not easy. It doesn't feel good, and sometimes you think to yourself, I should really get back at this person. But at the end of the day, after you get back at them, what have you gained? What
Yeah.
what have you gained? Because you still have to look in the mirror.
Yeah. And I
And
guess
can
my
you
neighbor could have said, "Oh, there he goes, taking advantage of me again." But
Yeah,
she
yeah,
didn't.
right. Because, again, I believe the word, and, I'm going to get my reward. I'll get some rewards here on earth, but I'll get some in heaven. And so, you try to do and live the best you can. That's
Hmm.
that's really all I can say about that one. Because now I have an ex-husband as well, and it was an abusive marriage, and I'm not sure that I could do that today, but you just never know what you can do. You
You
you never
never
know.
know.
You never know what you can do because God will grace you to do so much. One of the people that I admire a lot is Joyce Myers, and she talks about her story a lot of her abuse with her father, molesting her and whatnot. But before he died, she took both him and her mom in and took care of them and provided care for them and all of that until he died. And before he died, she was able to lead him to Christ. So you just never know,
Wow.
you never know what you're doing and how what you're doing is going to affect someone's spiritual walk. And that's
Hmm.
what it's all about at the end of the day. We're not here just to just walk aimlessly through. There's a spiritual component.
Hmm.
And so that's what my focus is. Yeah.
Now, I was talking to someone earlier this week, and
Hmm.
he asked a question that stopped me dead in my tracks. We were talking about just Black people in general, Black Americans.
Okay.
And he said he was wondering what kind of people
Hmm.
we would be in slavery if we had
Hmm.
no faith.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine.
If we had no faith, we would have never made it through slavery.
Yeah.
If I had no faith, I would have never made it through the foster home.
That's what I was
Yeah,
trying to
I
ask you.
I, I would
What
have
kind of
never.
person would you have been without your faith? Because you
I,
said God spoke to you early.
yes, I feel like when individuals are going through trauma like I did, and those of us that was in the foster home, I feel like God has a connection with us early on to keep us so that we won't get lost. And when I look at there were six of us in the foster home.
Mm,
And when I look at how the stories have unwound so far, I know it was God that put a hedge of protection around me because I could be dead like my sister, like the other two that are gone now. I could be that. That could be me. But He still has a purpose for me, and I'm still in the land of the living, and I thank Him for it. But if it was not for God, I wouldn't have made it. If I didn't feel him as a child and know that he loved me, I fell in love with Psalms 27 when it says, even if my mother and father forsake me, the Lord will lift me up. And that was my
Mhm.
scripture as a child. It's like,
That's a good
because
one.
I felt like a motherless child. I felt
Mhm.
like, I'm abandoned by my birth mom, didn't know anything about a birth father. And then you're in this foster home where they're treating you like you're nothing. All I had was God.
Mhm.
All I had was God. I would listen to gospel music, James Cleveland and Shirley Caesar and
Mhm.
Albertina Walker, the old school, and just get lost. I would let gospel music take me away from my reality. And I
Mhm.
would envision myself directing choirs. I would envision myself
Mhm.
singing and playing at the piano. And that would take me away from my reality. And that's how I survived. My connection with God
Mhm.
is how I survived. Hmm.
So you and your sister, though, I guess
Hmm.
you did. I guess you didn't feel the same way. Do you? I'm when I
You
was
know,
reading her story, I felt
mhm,
really bad for her because I actually was relating to that.
mhm,
There's a story that my mom told me of her dentist
mhm.
who had left home with his brother. They were preteens, like 10 years old.
Okay.
One kid lived during the day in the libraries reading and studying
Hmm.
because they couldn't really go to school. Not really. They sort of went to school every now and then, but they were
Right.
runaways.
Hmm.
The other boy stayed in the street.
Hmm.
He didn't believe in anything really. He
Hmm.
eventually died in a knife fight, just living in the
Wow.
streets, getting drunk and
Wow.
stuff. And so
Hmm.
when I was reading about you and your sister, I was thinking of Dr. Mack and his
Mm.
brother. How
Okay.
one kept the faith
Hmm.
and the other one was lost.
Well, I have to say this for my sister. She kept the faith. It
Hmm.
just looked different. It looked different.
Okay.
Anytime I would go and get her off the street, or she would come and hang out with me, we would talk about God. We would talk about salvation. And she would tell me, she said, Mill, I know God is real. She's like, even though I'm doing what I'm doing, because she was prostituting and all on drugs,
Hmm.
she was doing all of that and whatnot, that lifestyle. She said, but Mill, even though I'm doing what I'm doing, she's like, God talks to me. He lets me know, don't get in that car. He lets me know, don't deal with that person. She's like, God is still protecting me, even though I'm out here on these streets.
Okay.
She kept her faith, and I do know that before she passed, that she did rededicate and all of that kind of good stuff. But I
Do
have
you
to.
think she didn't have enough faith in herself then?
She didn't have faith in herself. She didn't know her worth. We spent our entire childhood being tore down.
Hmm.
It's as if their goal was to make sure we understood we were nobodies. We were second class citizens who don't deserve anything. How dare you think you have a right to be anything? How dare you think you
Hmm.
have a right to go to school? You're nothing. Nobody loves you. Nobody wants you. You're never going to be anything. And I will never forget the day I wrote about this in the book, where she told my sister she looked like SHIT in the face, but she didn't spell it. She actually said it.
Hmm.
And my sister was always trying to be beautiful enough,
Hmm.
always
Hmm.
trying to be good enough. We all six of us suffered some kind of way of trying to fit in, trying to be something enough to fit in, to prove that we are worthy, that we are humans, that it's like, treat us like you would anybody else. We're not second class citizens. Just because we were in foster care doesn't mean we're less than. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean that. um, but no, my sister, she did not know her worth. So that was one thing, but also I feel like she ended up on the streets because the streets were the only thing loud enough to block out the voices. And when I say the voices, the words of our foster parents, because
Okay.
I remember when I wrote my first book, I wrote 3 books in one year, but
Hmm.
still I felt like I had done nothing, because all you hear, no matter what you accomplish, no matter what you do, you still hear the voices of yesteryear. You'll never be
Hmm.
nothing. You're nobody. Nobody wants you. Nobody loves you. If it wasn't for me, you'd be dead. You're not worth anything. All you're gonna do is get pregnant and have babies. You're worth nothing. Just lay on your back. That kind of stuff is being fed to you over and
Hmm.
over and over again. I mean, from our gender to our color to the way we were shaped, we were tore down
Oops,
constantly
sorry.
every day. That's okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, would this have happened a couple of decades ago in terms of your mistreatment in foster care? I'd hate to think that
Mhm.
anybody would be treated like that nowadays. I hate to think that anybody
Right,
was treated even a couple of decades ago the way you were.
right,
But what about
right.
nowadays? Do you think you did say things are better, right? I hope.
You know, I think that it's the old cliche. The more things change, the more they stay the same. I think that there are more successful stories from foster care now
Hmm.
because the system and everyone has become aware of the abuse that has happened for years, abuse that was swept under the rug, abuse that no one really knew about until now you have all of these dysfunctional adults whose families were ripped apart. And so now the system works for reunification of the family, and I think that is awesome. They go out of their way to try to keep the family together.
Hmm.
So I think that there's a lot of positive things going on in foster care now, but of course there's still some bad apples. There's still some bad apples. You still hear the stories and whatnot, and as a survivor, and that's how I put it, of foster care. The thing that I like to say to people who may be considering being a foster parent is why? Why do you want to be a foster parent?
Mm.
That's the question. Tell me why you want to be one. Because it can't be about you at all. It cannot. If you want to be a foster parent, it cannot be about you at all. It has to be about the child. It has to be because you want to be there for a child or children. It cannot be to meet any of your needs because then the moment they're not meeting your needs, it's like they're replaceable or they're you want to throw them away or what have
Hmm.
you. So
Hmm.
that's the concern. That's why my question would be why do
Okay.
you want to be a foster parent? I think we're having
Okay.
issues with my
With your
power.
phone.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
not the phone, just the battery. But that's okay. We're gonna plug it in.
We can work through it. We have about 6 more minutes.
Okay.
If your phone can hang in there.
Yeah. Hopefully it will.
So, what would you say to a young person now? Those mean, horrible things that were said to you
Hmm.
are still being told to some kids nowadays, and not only
Right.
by foster, we're talking birth parents as
Birth
well.
parents. Exactly.
What kind of advice can you give to a young person who just has lousy
Hmm.
um, uh, parents, grandparents, caregivers,
Hmm.
foster parents, whatever? How can they deal with that? I mean, can you now just tell them to go to church? Do you think that would help, or
It's not as simple as just go to church. I wish it was, but it's not because once you go to church, you've got to build up trust and to have a relationship with people. What I would tell them is, I know it sounds like a cliche, but honey, you are here on purpose. You are here for a reason. Your mom may not have wanted you to hear, the dad may not have wanted you to hear, but trust and believe God wanted you here. And so you are here because you have a mark that you need to leave in this world. And let's figure out what that mark is. What is it you're supposed to do? What footprint are you supposed to leave in the sand? Because we're all supposed to leave a footprint. We're all supposed to leave something, deposit something into this earth. If we make it here, if we don't die in womb, if we don't get miscarried, if we're not aborted, if we make it through, then we're supposed to leave a deposit in this earth. And I don't care what anyone say to them, you have something to deposit that somebody needs.
mhm.
Somebody needs it. As much as they need something, somebody needs something that they have.
Do you think that workbook that you put out to
Yeah.
accompany this book
Hmm.
that would probably help people to work through some of their issues and find their
Definitely
path,
would.
right?
Yes, definitely would because it has a lot of again exercises in there for them, and this can only be ordered through the website at shamiellealston.org. The book can be ordered there too as well, but definitely the workbook. But yes, they can work through stuff. There's applications in there. There's affirmations in there. There's a lot of things in there. And the thing is, someone who's going through that, they're not going to always want to sit down and do that. But I have to tell them there's not a quick fix. There is not a quick fix. You're going to have to put the work in. You're going to have to invest in yourself when no one else will. You're going to have to believe in yourself when no one else will. Find that one thing about yourself that you like, that one thing about yourself that you're proud of, and focus on that until the rest comes. Work
Now,
that one thing until the rest comes. Go ahead.
Now, what they might have to do, I think it was the second to the last chapter of your book, is called Reset.
Yes,
You were down and out, even though you had plenty of faith in God. You kind of hit the skids emotionally and spiritually.
Yes.
With the help of we won't say, but
they need
church.
They need to read. They need to read that chapter. But yes, and in my case, God loved me enough to reset the button himself, because sometimes we don't have the strength to do it.
Yes, I was going to ask. I was wondering who sets the reset button, you or God? In your case, God.
Right. And the thing is, there's sometimes when we have to reset the button, because there's some things that we have to do, whether it's going to school, whether it's getting a better job, whether it's reading, whether it's whatever. We have things that we need to do, but then there's some things that only God can do. And all of the things that I've been through in my life, it's like everything it's like it began to have a snowball effect. And you're a pastor and you're a Christian and you're dealing with all of this stuff going on, and then you're battling depression and you have no one to talk to, because Christians are just supposed to be superheroes, and if you go through anything, then God, you're a demon and everything is wrong with you and you have no faith. Yeah, all that kind of crap, right? Wow. So you internalizing this stuff, which is what I was doing. I was internalizing because I had no outlet and no one to talk to. And before you knew it, I was almost 300 pounds. Yes, I was almost 300 pounds just 2 years ago from depression, from all of the stuff that I've been through in my life. But I've got too much to do. And God himself said enough. And he pressed the reset button. And it's I mean, to be on this side of it, where I can once again see the light, where I can hear the bees, the birds humming and singing, and I can see the sun and I can feel the sun, to just be able to embrace it, where everything is not dark anymore. I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope to have you back.
Me too.
So we're talking with Shamielle Alston about her book, Pastor Shamielle Alston.
Yes.
You're building your church anew, right?
Yes, the church is the worship zone. We're preparing to launch. We're just waiting for the building, and we are really praying that it happens really soon. But we've got a building in mind. We're just waiting for some final things. But yes.
The worship zone. I like that.
The worship zone. Thank you.
So this book is called All a Part of Life. And what I like about it, and we only have a couple seconds left, but you do have scripture in here after every chapter. Really poignant, probing questions that make you pause and think.
Yes.
And it's an amazing story, All a Part of Life. And then hold up the workbook, because I don't have the workbook.
Yes.
The All a Part of Life workbook.
Yes.
Okay. So, Pastor Alston, I really enjoyed talking with you.
Me too. And thank you for having me. Definitely. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, folks, I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. And I will put her website in the description of this show, because her name, the spelling of her name might be a little challenging. It's Shamielle, but I'll hold it up for you. There you go.
Yes,
ShamilleAlston.org. There you go.
Yes.
So with that, you have a beautiful evening. And be sure to read Durham, North Carolina's online community paper if you've never seen an all-positive newspaper. I call it a newspaper. It's online. I'll always call it a newspaper, DurhamSkywriter.com. With that, you have a great evening. And ciao for now. Contact me at Twitter, at Durham Skywriter, if you would like to be a guest on the show. With that, good evening.
Good evening.